Okay, so last week we tried losing, and it sucked. So this week we decided to go back to winning. Took a little while to get there, but when we did, this was always going to be a tough game to predict because Indiana, they're one of those teams where you look at them and on paper they don't look like much of a threat. They don't really give a lot of impressive stuff off based on their numbers. But then they come on the field and they say, you know what, screw those numbers. We're going to come out here and do what we want. So I expected this game to be along the lines of the Colorado game in the sense that Michigan was going to get punched in the mouth and find itself down early, but they would be able to respond and ultimately pull away to win the game. And the game we got was kind of like that, except it was a bit more defensively minded than I expected. Oh, and of course, to Michigan's absolute incredible defense and the offense continuing to be in a funk from last week, but eventually managed to get things going there. But here we are. We have the win. With senior day as well, last game at the Big House for the seniors on this team, and can't think of a better way to go out, honestly. And so Michigan's now sitting at 10-1, and they are very much in the mix for the Big Ten championship. And for those that may remember, my goals for this year was 10 wins and to be competing for the Big Ten championship. So, as far as I'm concerned, we've achieved our goals this season. Good progress. Anything after this is extra. And of course, I know a lot of people are expecting something more for this team, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So, we are going to do something a little bit different today in the sense that we're not going to talk about the game so much. Because let's be honest, nobody cares about this game. Everyone cares about the next game, and we all know who it is, and we all know what's at stake. In fact, let's not even mince words. For Michigan, the playoffs start right now. For Michigan and arguably for Ohio State, even though they technically don't control their own destiny, the playoffs start next week, or rather this Saturday, in Columbus, Ohio. The game is now a virtual playoff game. And honestly, I don't think you can make it bigger than that. Unless, of course, national championship, but I digress. So, what we're going to do is we're going to look at how the three areas of this team, offense, defense, special teams, have progressed over the year to see how they hold up. And we'll bring in Ansels, of course, in this game because of sample size. First up is the offense. Michigan was able to quietly develop one of the most efficient offenses in the nation over the course of the season. In fact, let me just give you a quick throw up some numbers for you here. 63, 51, 45, 49, 14, 78, 41, 32, 59, 14, and 20. Those are the number of points that Michigan has scored in each of its 11 games so far this year. So that comes out to a mean of about 40 points or thereabouts. They only dropped below that mark 4 times. That was against Wisconsin, Michigan State, barely, Iowa, of course, and Indiana. So that means 7 times out of those 11 games, more than half of those games, they scored more than 40 points. I mean, that is phenomenal. And that is because Michigan now has a very balanced offense. In the sense that you have a running game for the first time in what seems like forever. And we don't just have one running back. You see, this isn't the advantage I give Michigan right now over Ohio State. Ohio State's got some talented running backs in the form of Mike Weber and, of course, JT Barrett, who can move the ball on his own. The problem is they only got that one guy, or just 2 guys. Michigan has a whole stable of capable running backs. You have Davion Smith, who led the way last night with 150 yards thereabouts. Or let me just pull up the actual number here. 158 yards, that's 6.9 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns. That's a career high for him. So can we stop, by the way, with all this talk about all this hand-wringing about whether or not he should be the featured running back? It's clear that he's got the starting job for a reason. But then you have Chris Evans, Ty Isaac, Karan Higdon. you have these capable running backs. And I think if Michigan can make sure the rushing attack will continue to be lethal against Ohio State, will continue to move the chains, I think they got a decent shot at pulling off the victory there. And this is really one of the big question marks people had coming into the season, which is that a lot of people weren't I mean, the running game had made some progress last year, but it wasn't where Harbaugh would want it to be. It wasn't, typical Jim Harbaugh run the football down your throat type of gameplay. So we wanted to see how it would end up this year, and for the most part, it's taken tremendous leaps forward, and that's due to both improved offensive line play as well as high-quality running backs. I mean, Davion Smith is who he is. Ty Isaac and Karan Higdon have the speed and the vision to gash your defenses, and Chris Evans, he could very well be the next Mike Hart. I mean, that kid is just absolutely phenomenal at how fast he is. He's a freshman, too, a true freshman for that matter. The passing attack, though, made up the other half of the offense. You had 3 elite receivers in Jake Butt, of course, Amar Darboh, and J.U. Chesson. Now, all 3 of them have had some uncharacteristic drops these last couple of games, but I think that was more due to the playing conditions and other factors as opposed to any lack of drop-off on their part. So, obviously, it could repeat against Ohio State. I'm hoping it doesn't, but we shall see. But for the most part, they've been absolutely phenomenal this year. And of course, the offense was anchored by Wilton Speight, who quietly became arguably the best quarterback in the Big Ten. Now, as we all know, though, Wilton got injured at the end of the Iowa game, and he was unavailable for this week, even though Harbaugh said he might be available. What Harbaugh is doing right now is classic gamemanship. He literally took us all the way down to the kickoff. He had Speight dressed and throwing balls in the warm-up. Now, I do believe that the fact that he can throw the ball, that's actually a pretty good sign. That may be indicated that this injury may not be as serious as we originally feared. And I'm hearing rumors, by the way, that Wilton Speight does have a 50-50 shot to actually being named a starter against Ohio State. The trick is, can he play through the pain, obviously, and can the offensive line keep the pressure off this quarterback? Because if he goes down again, it could be over. But I digress. We will see. So with Speight out this week, the big question is, how was the John O'Korn experiment going to go? And the results are inconclusive. By all accounts, John O'Korn had a pretty pedestrian day. He went 7-16 for 59 yards, 3.7 yards per attempt. Let me just say that I do not hold that against him because, first of all, it's his first start. Now, mind you, I've never played quarterback. I've never really played football, so I don't know how it would feel like. But I have to imagine that when you're the backup quarterback, getting the start for the first time, it's probably like going somewhere that your parents used to drive you to. I mean, you can be driven there 1,000 times, but the first time you have to do it by yourself, all of a sudden you're not quite sure where to go. And he did look kind of unsure of himself and kind of skittish early on in the game, but as the game went on, he got more comfortable. And they did keep the playbook pretty vanilla for him because, well, obviously you don't want to tip your hand toward Ohio State. New quarterback, want to keep the playbook vanilla. And the thing that I think a lot of people are overlooking, the weather was absolutely abysmal in terms of passing. I mean, you had a case where you had 30-mile-an-hour winds, gusting to 40. It was freezing. It was snowing to the point that by the end of the game, the entire field was whited out. I mean, you couldn't even tell where the ball was in regards to, the yard markers. It was basically trying to move the ball forward and hope for the best there. So I don't blame O'Korn for having trouble passing or just being conservative with passing in those conditions. And for that matter, Richard Lagow, who was Indiana's quarterback, he went 14 of 29, which he had 191 yards, but even still, the fact he managed to get those yards, first of all, was because of blind luck in some cases, because we had an instance where I think might have been Stribling or Thomas who got tripped up by the turf monster, and that led to a long completion. There were a couple of catches that he made, which I don't think should have counted as catches, but Big Ten refs, being what they are, said they did, so it is what it is. And overall, the fact that he managed to get 191 yards, and slightly over 50% completion, and those is nothing short of heroic, but I digress. John O'Korn does have a weapon, though, that Wilton Speight doesn't have, and that is his legs. And we saw him scramble around a lot in the pocket, kind of reminiscent of Devin Gardner. He couldn't really get anything going up until about 5 minutes left in the third quarter, where he was on 3rd and 8. He went to throw, saw no one open, managed to shed off 2 blockers, and saw it open downfield, and he kind of said to himself, okay, you know what? We're turning the ship around. The SSN We're Done Sucking is about to launch, and he took off for a 30-yard scramble. It was his longest run of the day. His only real run of the day, but that was the play that changed the game, because that set up Davion Smith's touchdown on the very next play, in fact, and it just gave Michigan the momentum they needed to carry forward. So I say all that to say this. Obviously, you would hope Wilton starts in Columbus because you want to go with the starting quarterback, especially for a big game like this. But I won't feel uncomfortable with O'Korn as the starter. Because to me right now, he is like early year Jake Rudock in the sense that he's here to help. He's not the kind of quarterback that can necessarily make this team better, but he won't make it worse. He doesn't need to win the game. He just needs to not lose the game. And I think in what will hopefully be more favorable weather conditions, it's going to be a hostile environment, no doubt about that. That's going to be a challenge. Horseshoe is always a tough place to play in. I think if he can show the same kind of decision-making he did today or on Saturday in the latter half of the game, and he's able to complete some balls downfield, I think he can do enough to win the game. But obviously, you hope Wilton Spate's the starter because, again, you want to go with starting quarterback in this situation, but we'll see. But even with all that in mind, don't let these last 2 games fool you. Michigan's defense is still very much the best defense in the country. In fact, here's some more numbers for you. 3, 14, 28, 10, 7, 0, 8, 23, 3, 13, 10. Those are the number of points Michigan has allowed this year. For those keeping score at home, that's an average of slightly under 11 points a game. That is absolutely ridiculous. And I know there's people who can make the argument that, Michigan's not playing world beaters here. I mean, you're playing the Illinois and the Rutgers of the world and the Marylands of the world. No big deal. The fact remains that, first of all, Michigan does have 3 top 10 wins over Colorado, Wisconsin, and Penn State. Of those 3 wins, Michigan held them to 28, 7, and 10, 28, 10, and 7 points, respectively. So that means Michigan hasn't given up more than 4 touchdowns in a game since the 3rd week of the season. I mean, this defense is just lethal. It is on another level. In fact, let me just get the, see if we can get here to Michigan defense here. For this particular game, Gideon led the defense with 9 total tackles, 1 for loss. We had a case where Michigan as a defense had 3 sacks and 12 tackles for loss. I mean, these guys are just on another level here. Don Brown has taken the defensive philosophy to a level that we never even thought possible after how elite DJ Durkin's defense was. Don Brown's defense is an absolute monster. This is a defense that is designed to make the quarterback as uncomfortable as possible. It's blitz heavy, it comes after you, and if you try to get cute or whatever, it makes you pay. I mean, just try to run the ball against this defense. You can't do it. It's like trying to throw against Jordan Lewis. It just can't be done. And just the amount of playmakers you have on this D, it's absolutely just incredible. I mean, Jabril Peppers, of course, Mike McCray, Channing Stribling, Tyler Charlton, Chris Wormley, Maurice Hurst, who said he could be back next year, Jordan Lewis, Brian Monet, Rashawn Gary, big man Rashawn. I mean, there's not much I can say about this defense that I can't say I haven't already said or other people haven't already said. But, again, don't let the loss to Iowa or the slow start to this week fool you. This is still the best defense in the country. Because when you hold teams to, on average, to 11 points or fewer, 9 times out of 10, that's enough to win you the game. Or rather, 10 times out of 11. It's dependent on the offense to get the job done. So, I know Ohio State has a high-octane offense, but they've also had their troubles recently too. You know, after they lost to Penn State, they almost lost at home to Northwestern, and then they came out and seemed to do what they wanted against Nebraska and Maryland. You know, back-to-back 62-point wins, but they just escaped East Lansing with a 1-point victory, 18-17, I believe it was. Hell, if D'Antonio hadn't gone for that 2-point conversion, maybe they would have lost in overtime. I don't know. The point is, Ohio State's offense they're lethal, they're explosive, but like I said before, they're pretty one-dimensional in the sense that they're focused on running the ball like Michigan is. The difference is that J.T. Barrett hasn't quite been the passer that he was in years past. Now, I don't know why that is. He doesn't seem to be able to attempt the long balls anymore, but I'm sure both teams are going to empty the playbook on Saturday. And I'm sure we'll see a lot of new things from Ohio State offense, just as they'll see a lot of new things from us. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see. And that brings to special teams. This was really the big question mark going into this game. We didn't really know how it was going to go. You know, who would be able to do what? Would it be as good as last year's? The departure of John Baxter to USC was definitely a loss. But for the most part, Chris Partridge has definitely made a name for himself in this role. He might have actually found a future in this role. Kenny Allen seems to have worked out whatever issues were plaguing him at the start of the season. He had some absolutely incredible punts today, including one that got down to the 1-yard line thanks to a heads-up play by Michigan special teams, which basically amounted to going to the end zone and punching the ball back over the goal line to prevent a touchback. And field goals is no longer an issue for him. So I'd say Kenny Allen is definitely ready to go. I mean, whatever problems he had before, I maintain that he was being asked to punt too much, and that messed with his field goal ability. But as it went down the line, Michigan got into situations where they didn't need to punt that much, if at all. So I think that was able to help him rest his leg a little bit, work out those kinks, and now he seems back to form, which is good. Jabril Peppers continues to put Michigan in some field position. He has taken one back yet. I don't expect him to take one back against Ohio State. That would be absolutely phenomenal if he did, and I think if that happens, that would pretty much lock him up for the Heisman. But he's still doing what he needs to do to put his team in position to have decent starting position on the field. Okay, so basically that's my overview of how Michigan has fared this season. So now let's talk about the game. I think this is going to be an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. In the sense that I think the story of the game is going to be Ohio State's offense versus Michigan's defense. Because Ohio State's defense, I got news for you. That's pretty suspect. I think Michigan can easily move the ball on that defense. I think they can score some points. But it's not going to be a question of how much Michigan scores. The question is how much Ohio State doesn't score. Because I think if Michigan's defense is truly the best in the country, if they're as good as they claim to be, they could make it a very, very long day for J.T. Barrett and his squad. Now, as for the game itself, I think Michigan's going to win. And I will admit that every year I kind of say that when Michigan plays Ohio State, I'll always predict Michigan to win. Even during the last years of Hoax regime, I always said Michigan's going to win. Michigan's going to win. And I do believe that. I'm saying it right now. I'm picking Michigan to beat Ohio State and then beat Wisconsin in a rematch of the Big Ten Championship game and go to the playoff. Okay? Until it doesn't happen, it's going to happen. If I'm wrong, so what? So, but yeah, this game is going to be absolutely must-see television. Game Day is doing a 5-hour special on it, starting at 7 in the morning. Gonna have to get up early down there in Columbus. Because everyone knows that if these two teams stay at where they are, which is 2 and 3, which is where they should be, although part of me hopes the committee will do the right thing and rank them both number 1 and number 2 for just the hell of the game. I mean, come on, you put A&M as number 4 for their match against Alabama. So come on, committee, help us out here. Just 1 week, number 1, number 2. That's all I'm asking. Because of the way it's set up right now, this is a virtual playoff game. The winner will likely go in, the loser likely will not. And I know there's a lot of talk now about, there's maybe 2 Big Ten teams. I don't want to hear that right now. I understand it's possible. I understand you could make a very legitimate argument at how both Michigan and Ohio State deserve consideration, especially if it's a close game. I can hear, maybe Penn State deserves a nod. I mean, you can go on so far to say that should Clemson lose, then maybe there should be 3 Big Ten teams in the playoffs. I've heard that. Right now, I'm not buying it. Because, first of all, there's 2 teams from one conference that will happen. It's going to be from the SEC because, yeah. But until 2 Big Ten teams get in, I'm assuming that only one is going to get in. And that one will be the winner of the game. Could the loser get in? Maybe, especially if should Ohio State win this game and Penn State goes to the conference championship and Penn State wins, Penn State wins would be the ultimate nightmare scenario for the Big Ten because I don't know who you pick then. See, if Wisconsin wins, I would think you could pick Michigan because Michigan has wins over both Wisconsin and Penn State. Ohio State has win over Wisconsin, but not Penn State. So if Penn State wins, I think you would pick Penn State and probably Michigan. So in other words, it's actually almost impossible for Ohio State to get in unless Michigan were to win. Then maybe you can make an argument that maybe Ohio State can get in, but I don't know. See, this is the problem. This is why we need an 18 playoff here. This is too confusing. But let me present to you guys a more likely scenario here. Let's say, again, assuming the game is between number 2 Ohio State and number 3 Michigan. Let's say that Alabama loses to Auburn that night. If that were to transpire, I think it is entirely possible that the winner of the game could be ranked number 1. I mean, I know there's a lot of hand-wringing and people, complaining about Michigan not moving down a spot at all after losing to Iowa. I was shocked by it myself. In fact, I want to address a comment here in my last video that was made by a fellow by the name of John Smith. John Smith wrote, "Explain how this playoff is working. Ohio State loses to Michigan State last year, a ranked team, and falls out of the top 4 and wins out and doesn't go to the playoff. But this year, Michigan loses to an unranked Iowa team and doesn't go anywhere. They win, they will go to the playoff." As far as last year goes, I think the reason Ohio State fell out is because it was at home and because they've been absolutely dominant and no one expected Michigan State to win that game. I personally think Ohio State kind of got robbed by falling out of the top 4, but it is what it is. I mean, let's be honest. That Michigan State team last year ended up in the playoff by accident, which makes it very satisfying to see them go 3-7 this year. How's the old saying go again? Pride comes before the fall? Right. As for how Michigan didn't drop a spot, I think that's because Colorado moved up to number 10. Because with Colorado at 10, and they will likely stay there if not move higher with their win this week, Michigan now has 3 wins in the top 10. Wisconsin, Penn State, and Colorado. So that is something that no other team in the top 4 has. I mean, Alabama, you want to say who no one hasn't played anybody? Alabama's played nobody. That's number 1. Ohio State has wins over Oklahoma, which is looking better now, and Wisconsin, but that's only 2 wins. And Clemson, just don't even give me Clemson now. Clemson's still in the top 4 by the sheer grace of God. I mean, the fact they haven't lost more than 1 game is absolutely amazing to me. But I digress. So that, I think, is the reason Michigan stayed in the top 4 this week. I do not anticipate any movement this week unless, again, the committee wants to do the right thing and make Ohio State and Michigan number 1 and number 2. But again, that's why I stand by my say that the winner of this game is going to the playoff, assuming they win the Big Ten championship game, and the loser of this game will be staying home. Could there be a scenario where both teams get in? Yes, but until that happens, it's not going to happen. Same thing with Michigan beating Ohio State. Until it doesn't happen, it's going to happen. And if I'm wrong, so what? All right, so that will do it for this week. Thank you again for watching. Just a quick forewarning here. Obviously, I'll be doing one for this week, obviously, for the game. I will try to do one for the Big Ten Championship game if we do end up going there, as well as for whatever bowl games may come after that. I can't make any promises I will, because I didn't do one for the Citrus Bowl, because I was in Florida for that game. But, we'll see. So just forewarning, there's a chance that my next video could be the last one for this season, but we shall see. For now, thank you for watching, and go Blue.